"You're banned forever. Nobody touches my lake." Those were her exact words, screamed at the top of her lungs like she was auditioning for a part in some HOA horror movie. This psycho president didn't just yell at me for fishing, she slapped me with a $100 fine for, and I quote, touching water she didn't even own. Picture this. She's in this flaming red blazer strutting around the lake like she's the mayor pointing at the exit sign like it's the border to North Korea, absolutely drunk on 2 decades of unchecked authority. But right then, when I looked close, I noticed her hands weren't shaking from rage. It was fear. The kind of fear you get when you're hiding something way bigger than a $100 fishing fine. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about the lake. No, she was desperate to protect a secret, and I'd just stumbled into her little kingdom. Let me tell you, once I figured out what it was, I turned her entire world into my own personal chessboard. So there I am. It's a Saturday that feels like it's straight out of an old postcard. The lake's glassy skies blue. Not a worry in my mind. I'm sitting on this cracked bench with my dad's old fishing rod. The only thing he left me when cancer took him, a piece of wood that still has patience. Dad, 1985, carved in the handle. These days, fishing is less about catching dinner and more about staying sane after losing my firm a couple years back. I hadn't had a single bite in 2 hours, but honestly, I didn't care. Sometimes you just need somewhere quiet to remember who you are. That peace. It lasted about 3 minutes. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" That's the voice I heard slicing through the air like a chainsaw through soft butter. I turn around and there she is, a woman in her early 50s, standing there in a red blazer like she's about to host a political rally, wielding a clipboard with enough aggression to make it look like a weapon. Her name tag screamed, "Patricia Whitmore," and I swear she looked at my fishing rod with the kind of disgust you'd give to a rat running across your kitchen counter. "I'm fishing," I said, trying to sound casual. "Is there a problem?" She pursed her lips so tight they just about vanished. Fishing without a permit is a $100 violation. HOA Guidelines Section 7.3b. I just blinked. Did I hear that right? A permit to fish. "This is HOA property," she said, already scribbling on her pad. "All recreational activities require prior approval from the board." There was something about the way she kept looking everywhere except at my dad's rod that set off alarm bells. "The HOA owns this lake?" I asked, taking the citation. Her jaw clenched. "We oversee all community assets. That's $100 due in 7 days or it doubles." As she stomped off her heels, clicking like a ticking bomb, I couldn't shake the feeling something was way off. I spent that evening exactly how you'd expect, digging through property records like a man possessed. Old habit from my days as an architect, never trust a property line until you've checked it yourself. And let me tell you, the HOA's own website was a marvel of nonsense rules about mailbox colors, grass height, but not a single word about actually owning the lake. So I went to the county website, pulled up the assessor's map, and nearly spit out my coffee. The lake, not owned by the HOA. Nope. Turns out Clearwater Lake and the 5 acres around it belonged to something called Clearwater Holdings, LLC, registered to an address in Arizona. That HOA had been collecting lake maintenance fees for 20 years, but they didn't own a single drop. That's fraud, plain and simple. Now I could have called the authorities and let them handle it. But I couldn't forget how Patricia's hands shook the way she refused to even glance at my dad's rod. So I went a step further, looked up the LLC owner, found a phone number for Walter Brennan, age 87. My hands hovered over the keypad, debating whether to call him. In the end, I slept on it, citation sitting on my desk like a challenge. Next day, I walked into the HOA meeting ready for war. Folder of documents, PowerPoint loaded, sitting in a folding chair while Patricia made her grand entrance with her board, all of them looking like school principals at detention time. 50 residents there, most half asleep, but I spotted Elena Rodriguez, mom blogger, live streaming from the back. "Mind if I sit?" I asked. "Free country except in Riverside Heights," she muttered, and I knew I wasn't alone. Patricia started the meeting by listing off violations that'd make a North Korean bureaucrat blush: garbage cans, grass, even a garden gnome pointing the wrong way. Then she read my name, Marcus Chen, fishing without permit, $100 fine. I stood, clicker in hand. "I'd like to address this citation," I said, and Patricia gave me that predator's smile. Residents don't have speaking privileges unless granted by the board, but I'd read the bylaws and told her any member has the right to address accusations. The room went dead silent. She gave me 2 minutes. I only needed one. Pulled up the county records big on the projector. Clearwater Lake is owned by Clearwater Holdings, LLC, not the HOA. A few gasps, and her face went from cherry red to hospital white. Next slide. 20 years of financial reports. That's over $2 million collected under false pretenses. The crowd exploded. Patricia shrieked, "How do we know those are real?" I said. "Public records anyone can check." An old guy up front shouted, "I want my fees refunded." The board started panicking. Patricia slammed her gavel, order. When she finally regained control, she called for security. "Mr. Chen is to be removed for disruption and false accusations. Let's vote to raise his fine to $500 and ban him from all common areas." 5 hands shot up, and just like that, I was thrown out. Elena caught me in the parking lot, phone still recording. "Patricia just made a huge mistake. This is going viral." I nodded. Adrenaline surging, she wanted to play dirty, fine, but I could play smarter. That night I called Walter Brennan. He answered on the second ring. When I explained everything, there was this long, heavy silence. Then gravel in his voice. "I've been waiting 20 years for someone to call me about this. They stopped paying rent in '04 and started telling everyone they owned it. My lawyer said it had cost more to fight than the lake was worth. That's when I had my wild idea. What if I buy it?" I asked. "Why would you do that, son?" "Because some things are worth fighting for," I said, surprising myself. He laughed, told me to come to Arizona and talk in person. The next morning, Patricia went nuclear. Wanted posters on my lawn water shut off illegally. Her car crawling behind me as she filmed shouting about citizen's arrest. She even called 911, tried to get me arrested for stalking her on a public street. Cops showed up, looked at her like she'd grown a second head. One of them asked if I wanted to press charges. I said, "Just document it. I'll need the paper trail." That afternoon, Frank Morrison, 72 years old Vietnam vet, showed up at my door with a box. "Been waiting 20 years to give this to someone with guts," he said. Inside, photo albums, tapes, proof of Patricia's long con, and something darker. Frank pointed to a photo of Patricia's late husband, David, who drowned in that lake. He was investigating the HOA's finances. A week later, he was dead. Patricia's never been the same. She's not evil, Marcus, just broken. Frank had the receipts, permission slips, notes, even old cassettes. That night, Elena texted her video had 50,000 views. Patricia's reign was starting to crack. I drove 11 hours to Arizona to meet Walter. The man was all sunburned, fishing stories, and honesty. I told him the truth. I wanted to buy the lake to make a point. He laughed so hard he nearly spilled his beer, but he agreed. $180,000. And promise me you'll stop her, not destroy her. We shook on it, and by the next morning I had the deed. The war escalated overnight. By sunrise, a new fence was going up, signs everywhere. Private property, no trespassing. The whole neighborhood woke up to find their routines broken. Patricia lost it, showed up live streaming, shouting, "This is kidnapping." But the crowd turned on her when Frank spoke up. "Tell them why you really care, Patricia." She started throwing legal jargon, adverse possession. But Frank just smiled. "You need proof you didn't have permission." And we've got it. Patricia's lawyer showed up next, waving papers in my face, talking about 20 years of open and notorious use. I smiled and said, "You ever heard of a tape recorder?" That night, Elena sent me a video of Patricia drunk at a bar, slurring about how she'd been faking ownership for 20 years, in her own words. Then I listened to Frank's cassettes, her voice, years ago, admitting she was waiting out the clock to steal the lake through legal technicality. The next HOA meeting was packed, 300 people crammed in the tension thick enough to cut. Patricia gave her best speech, showing photos, talking about community safety, even playing the grieving widow card. She called a vote to confirm her ownership. But I stood up with documents and played the tape, her own voice admitting the plan. The crowd erupted, chanting, "Vote her out." And that was that. Patricia just sat there defeated. "I did it for David," she whispered, "but I became everything he hated." After the meeting, I found her by the water staring out, lost. She threatened to destroy the dam, drain the lake. I called the demolition company and canceled her order, offered her a job teaching swimming instead. She broke down, finally letting her grief out. These days, Patricia's traded her red blazer for a whistle, teaching kids to swim, finally making the lake safe the right way. I still fish every Saturday with my dad's rod, Frank playing chess nearby Elena, blogging about community healing. That's how I bought a lake, exposed a fraud, and ended up saving the woman who tried to ruin me. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment, it's about helping people find their way back. Now tell me, what would you have done in my place? Drop your take on HOA justice below, and if you want to hear about the time my neighbor tried to sue me over my tree dropping leaves, well, subscribe and stay tuned.